My name is Sadell Bradley, and I am the programs director at Mortar. And so I guess I'll be asking you guys the questions going forward. I want to go back to, Lachey, something that was in your bio. You talked about a challenge in terms of people opening stores or locations, but not really inquiring with the community as to what their needs are. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So I'll reference what we call community development corporations, or CDCs. Many of our communities have those, and that is going to be the kind of the center of what's to come maybe for the next 10 years, right? And we are not likely thinking of what the community might look like, what the residency might look like, or that consumer base. We might see that there is an opportunity to take on that storefront and run with it. So I think it's important to have those conversations. What is this community going to look like in 10 years? Who might be my neighbor? Has the building that I'm moving into, has it had a lot of turnover? What's the reputation? So there are a lot of questions I think that need to be asked before we jump in and open those storefronts and not know what's to come. And I think we're seeing that a lot here lately, maybe in the news when it comes to local businesses.
I want to ask a follow-up question. There are times when a neighborhood is changing, and initially they will offer entrepreneurs of disenfranchised backgrounds opportunities to be in storefronts at a lower rate. But then they have a plan for the neighborhood to change, and when the neighborhood changes, the person is not able to afford the place that they have sought after and secured at the lower rate. How can entrepreneurs find out the kinds of things that you know? Is your office the place that they need to go? Is the economic development of the Cincinnati Port Authority? How do they find out before they sign a contract?
So you listed some great examples. Get a lawyer, one, if you can have representation. And I say that to know, or you would be able to have some of those tough conversations, and they'll be able to ask the questions that maybe you don't think of. But when we're talking about disenfranchised businesses and communities and going into those spaces, LISC, yes, we are an advocate, we're a supporter, especially for small businesses. So we are happy to support the port, the Cincinnati Community Economic Development Office, but your public figures, of course. So be present at City Hall. Go to those commissioner meetings. Go to those community council meetings. Having that reputation and showing your face is extremely important, and you get that advocacy.
Thank you so much. Terry, I'm going to come to you. You were talking about people in the food spaces. You're with Finley Market, which has a lot of parts to it that most people don't know. But for food entrepreneurs, you said that they're coming in thinking that it's simple. If I have good food and I have a nice restaurant atmosphere, or whatever these maybe 4 components might be. And you said, I revealed to them that there's so much more for them to have success in their business. Can you talk a little bit about what you're seeing and what you recommend?
So the food industry is an entry point for a wide range of people. Rarely is somebody coming into this with both a food industry background plus a business background. So they come in with this product, an idea, a dream, or we support a lot of immigrants that are coming, and this is the value they have in hand. And we're trying to catch people early before they make huge investments in time and money, and they're just going on their food and their passion, and they're losing their money, they're losing their shirt, making bad decisions before it's too late. So the food industry is kind of unique because I think you can come to Finley Market and become a part of this community. And we are trying to connect people, like with your question. Individuals can't do all this stuff. So we're trying to be there as a resource to clear the path, help them build a path, and help them grow into their dream and their vision before just taking a big leap. And It's not gonna work. Everybody thinks it's just give me the money, I've got the stuff, but you can get the money, but if you don't know how to do all this stuff, your business is going to be short-lived. So we balance between inspiring you and helping support your dream and like just crushing it with all this knowledge and stuff that you got to do. But we're really trying to bring awareness, and then we help you identify your strengths, your weaknesses, and just try to connect you with resources, education, community members, and to help you make good decisions. We have a lot of expertise down there, and we are just committed to helping you make it, so that's what we try to do.
And we're really excited to have both of you guys as our partners, because part of what we do at Mortar is to help our entrepreneurs have access, whether it's access to information, access to capital, access to education. We want to say yes to folks who have heard no a lot. And so we really appreciate your partnership. Erica, I want to come to you. You were talking about how you had this opportunity, the neighborhood began to change, and you had to pivot out of the current brick and mortar that you were in into looking for another space. Can you talk about some of the challenges that you faced and how you were able to tell yourself it's okay to make a change?
Yeah, we opened February 14, 2020. So we were like, day of love, this is going to be all love, everything's going to be great. And then COVID happened. So we immediately were like, whoa, wait a minute, we've signed this 2-year lease. We didn't know what that was going to mean for us. But we were blessed enough. At the time, we had 4 business partners. For anybody who doesn't know about Paul's history, we were initially 4 businesses. We got down to 2. And so after COVID, things began to change. So we were flanked by some very successful restaurant businesses, and those restaurant businesses constantly have food traffic. I mean, constant, lunchtime, UC, Children's Hospital, constant food traffic. Post-COVID, a lot of businesses went more to like a DoorDash model where you order your food, you go in there and get it. So you have less people waiting, less people dining in, which for us meant less foot traffic coming into our store. Because oftentimes, we're waiting on our food, you come in, shop, you spend $50, right? You get enough people doing that every day, it felt really, really good. So one store went down to just a food truck, said, I can make more money just going to Children's Hospital, done. One business struggled to get back up. Foot traffic was not there. Retail is very different than food. People have to eat every single day, at least 3 times they're gonna do it. You don't have to get a plant, you don't have to get a candle, you don't need a crystal. These are things you want. So you would have to say, I'm not going to eat, so I have to want to go down there. And we noticed that want started to diminish. And part of that was the neighborhood started to change. Less police presence, more violence in the neighborhood, more trash. It just became an area that became less and less conducive to the type of environment we wanted to have. Parking became an issue just because, the meters stopped. They weren't monitoring the meters anymore. So people had no need to move. And so when we signed our last lease, we kind of started looking at the numbers and was like, they're steady, but they're not going up, right? For me, steady is not good enough, right? Like I want to see the growth we had the first couple of years and we weren't seeing it. And so I approached my business partner because I wanted to give her plenty of time, and she decided that she wanted to keep the business. That for me, the location was no longer successful and it just didn't look like what we needed to do. So we, kind of just looked at our other options, and we decided for right now, because the name of our store is Pause, just to put it on pause. It's not a stop, it's just a pause until we find the next location. So for us, it initially was a difficult challenge because you feel like, why didn't I do more? Or what could I have done differently? But we were on the council. I was on the Coreyville City Council, Community Council. I was going to the meetings, and a lot of the things that they were saying were going to happen, for whatever reason, just weren't able to. So we were doing a lot of the things to try to make it work and stand for the long haul. But there's only so much you can do when your money is involved and you have to start dipping into things that savings and other money that just doesn't feel good. So we just had to make the decision that when our lease was up, it was time for us to put a pause on it till the next opportunity came.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. Another, I want to kind of piggyback off of what Erica is asking and ask a question about the finances. How do you know when you are financially ready to open a brick and mortar? or what indications would say you're not ready financially to open one? How did you know?
If you can't make ends meet before you go, you're not ready. But I think if you don't know your numbers, I really wanted to say this because I was talking to somebody who went through the program and they really liked it. And we were talking about numbers and I'm like, and some people didn't understand why you need to understand fixed and variable cost. And I'm like, okay, Duke can vary. Your rent is fixed. So you have to understand how much you're making. So you have to understand what your budget is. Okay, I only make $2,000 a week, but I have to pay, the salon lease. And I'm just throwing out, numbers because anyways, but you have to understand what your numbers are. You have to project how you're gonna make it because with my business, I have to do so many silk presses or whatever the case is. So you have to understand your numbers. So your variable and your fixed cost is really important. And I really urge people to look at the numbers more. I feel like I didn't understand the numbers initially as a hairstylist opening up my first space, hole in a wall 10 years ago. It was like 10,000 years ago. But just understanding the numbers is really important. So you have to know how much you make and what you need to make to pay for your cost of living, your whatever it is, whatever your overhead expenses are, you have to understand those numbers.
I'm going to go to you, Sean.
I'm on this panel.
I don't want you to just sit here. As you're dealing with alumni, we're talking about the financials and knowing the numbers, and maybe you guys can chime in too as well. What are you seeing in terms of readiness as it pertains to people having enough money saved or runway such that if their business doesn't produce what they hoped in a particular month or quarter, they don't have to close? You're seeing people close businesses because they're not financially secure. What are you seeing?
I'm not seeing anybody being in a financial place to open up their brick and mortars when they go into it. A lot of the misconception has been, once I open up this storefront, I'll be able to drive traffic and increase my revenue because I have a physical location. I can bring people to me. I can advertise out of this space. There's a draw here. I have something unique. When in fact, they don't take into account that they've just taken on a $1,500 overhead, and that doesn't account for what they're generating already. And so they come in unprepared because they don't have the savings. They don't have a year's worth of $1,500 a month. They don't currently generate enough revenue to operate on a monthly basis. And they're automatically assuming that just because they might get some additional foot traffic, they'll be able to make up that difference. And that hasn't been the case historically. That'll never be the case. You have to have something to fall back on. You have to have a cushion. You have to understand your personal finances and have a personal savings before you can even begin to invest in a business transaction as heavy as taking on such large overhead. And we find ourselves in a place where we have a lot of people who aren't really educated on how savings even personally works. We don't have people who understand the 50, 30, 20 breakdown. So 50% of what you make needs to go to your necessities like your rent, your food. 30% needs to go towards your savings. So whether that be your retirement, whether that be like your personal savings, your rainy day fund, and that 20% for fun. A lot of people are doing it backwards. They're spending 50% for fun, 30% for their livelihood, and not even thinking about savings. So that's something I'm starting to run into a lot. And we're trying to get into that place where we educate people on how you divvy up your personal finances is going to affect how you divvy up your business finances.
Now, there's a lot of talk about the leveraging of OPM, other people's money, or debt, which is where you guys operate at LISC. What kind of, because everybody in Mortar, would love to have everything be granted to them. How can I find a grant? Where can I get free money is something that people are always looking for. But a lot of times money is not free. You have to be credit worthy. You have to be bankable. You have to be someone of integrity that they can trust. And so when you start to loan out money, what is the criteria that you use to decide, hey, this entrepreneur is a worthwhile investment?
I'll tell you now, it's a national process when we're looking at lending products. But I will say, I won't give full criteria, being that's not my scope. But when we are talking about giving that money out, we want to see that you have days cash on hand. And it depends on the business and what type of lending you're looking for or loan you're looking for. And that will vary. If you're a developer, that's going to vary or look different than someone who might be in the salon industry. But also being able to have reputable outreach to other private funds. So if you are, hey, I have a savings account, I've started this, and Sean alluded to that. We are partnering. We have other strategic partnerships in the community to help leverage the money that I have saved. So we are looking at those sorts of variables and your audits. So if you bring in a certain amount of money, you are likely being audited, and we're going to check that full report.
So you need to be prepared with your tax returns. You need to be prepared with your banking statements. You need to be prepared with your profit and loss. You need to be prepared with all of that and demonstrate that you are a reputable person in the community by your associations, by the people who are helping you to do your business. And so that's going to take some time. And Terry, you were talking earlier about kind of the trajectory a person can go on as a restaurateur to get themselves ready, both as a person who's cooking food and serving it, and as a business owner. Can you talk about some of those stages of development that you guys recommend at Finley?
It's really a big question, because we are meeting people where they are. And almost no one is prepared financially or understands their finances. And certainly not the food industry. It's a whole different thing: costing, pricing, sourcing, staffing, permitting. It's a big thing. And this is where I always go back to starting small and building your education and this financial pathway, because we don't want people to get here and asking for a loan and they don't have any of this background financial information. And unfortunately, when you get to this traditional loan thing, the gate is it's still the same. We have to meet these standards that are set by who knows who. But so we are working within that system and trying to prepare you to be able to get those loans, to be able to have a relationship with banks. We work with a lot of different banks who come and talk to our businesses, develop relationships with them. And so there is some room there to go beyond the black and white numbers. We build those relationships. But in the end, it's still that system. And so when you start a food business, again, and I agree completely, and this is one of my, you have to know your numbers. Before COVID, food business, you can kind of be sloppy and make it up. But post-COVID, you have to know your numbers, and that's the only way you're going to make it. And it's the thing that scares people most, and we try to put a spotlight on it and help people. It's something you have to do, and if it's or have a partner who does it, because if you do not know your numbers and have control of those, you're not going to last for long. So it's tackling the things that are really tough in the beginning. And I also suggest you can pay. You can choose, if you have the resources, what things to outsource. But with so many things for me in the beginning of a business, I want you to know these numbers and how this works before you outsource it. So that's what we want to do. But I will also share with you, like most food businesses out there, they may be running for 10 years and you think they got it going on and you think they're crushing it. And behind the scenes, they're not. So don't think that you have to know everything and you're doing everything right. I encourage you to be open to asking for help and asking questions. And you don't know, and teach me. So, because it's critically important that you understand that.
Thank you. So, Erica, Terry was just talking about a demarcation line between pre-COVID and post-COVID. And as a nation, as a world, everybody has changed post-COVID. So many things. Anybody that's ordering from Amazon all the time understands that so much has shifted to being e-commerce, online, AI, all these kinds of dynamics. And so as a product-based business that was in a location, how does the COVID situation play in what's happened in your business? And as it keeps going and we see all these malls closing and we see these storefronts closing, what is the future? Are we trying to go where the puck used to be, or are we really grasping what's going to be the future? Terry was talking about DoorDash. Actually, it was you talking about DoorDash. So is it really the dream that we really thought it was, like you said in the beginning, or might we need to be looking into some other means to get our products and services out?
I think you really need to, one, know your market. You have to know who your customer is, right? Mm-hmm. So anybody that's went through Mortar, your SWOT analysis, right? So you know who you should be targeting. And I think you really need to have a hybrid. So I think as much as you spend on your online presence, if you do have a brick and mortar, you have to understand what the pros and cons of that will be. So for us, when we initially opened, I had a store prior to COVID, and the internet e-commerce wasn't that important. Like more people wanted to come in and shop and feel things. And I think now more people are willing to take a risk. Like I'll just order it online, especially from Amazon. I'll take it to my nearest Whole Foods, or I'll just put it back on my porch and I'll return it. For me, especially making candles, you can't smell it. The technology isn't there yet to smell the candle. So a lot of people enjoy coming in because they wanted to actually have that experience. But what I do see is the traction from people that have purchased before. They go online and they feel much more comfortable because I've experienced the product already. So for me, that's why it's important that I have places and locations that I can still have the product for people who haven't smelled it. And then getting smarter as an entrepreneur, like how do I make it easier for people who are never going to come to Ohio, they're never coming to Cincinnati, they're never coming to Paul's. How do I still provide them with an experience? And I'll be honest, I'm a small business owner, so I'm going to websites like Bath and Body Works. I'm going to Yankee Candle. I'm going to my competitors and say, y'all got the money and the budget. What are y'all doing? If it's working for you, right, and you can do the research and you can see there's so many tools now to tell you things that are working. If it's working for you, I can try it too. So it's also, again, that's why you have to know your competitors and not just food, flavor, smell, industry is all the same. So if it's working for them for something you can't visibly touch, see what your competitors are doing. They have a huge budget for marketing, which most of us probably do not have. So see what they're doing, give it a shot. But I really think that the hybrid model is what works best. I will say that in a lot of bigger cities, people are wanting that camaraderie. People are wanting to see people again. Like the online stuff is fun. I'm a consumer, I shop online, but I still enjoy going to a store. Not for everything, but some things I do enjoy. So I think, again, just having that hybrid model and knowing your limitations with what your product are, and also your return policy. If I can try it and don't like it and send it back, I'm more likely to do it versus I don't want to try something I've never experienced and be stuck with it. So
I love that answer. The Surgeon General said in 2023 that the country was going through an epidemic of loneliness. And so that there are situations of paint and sip or, kind of candle pour, that kind of business might actually benefit from having a brick and mortar location where people can come together. But then we move into the question about the marketing and the driving of traffic and knowing how many customers you actually need to fulfill your goals. how are you driving traffic, Annetta, to your business? How do you know how many silk presses that you need to do, or how many customers need to come?
I know my numbers. That's one. I think that one thing that we, post-COVID, people aren't really saying that it is very hard out here. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like, it's hard out here for every business. Of course, I don't know their numbers, whatever, but people don't want to spend right now. It's a very scary time. So basically, to get people and knowing my numbers and all those things. Look, my ADD kicked in. What was the question? I was about to go all in. So this is real talk. So this makes
this is good.
Media.
It's about marketing and about driving traffic. You were talking about, you were in a location and someone was trying to open a salon right next to yours, and how you decided to deal with that competitive factor. But you have to know, I need to have this much traffic coming, and how am I getting that traffic? Is it word of mouth? A lot of times in salons, it is word of mouth. Is it guerrilla marketing? Is it the location that you've chosen? You know that this location will always have people who need the hair.
Yeah, I just did a presentation on it, but that's what I get for trying to sound important. Okay, let's start over. So basically, what we're doing, we just paid for marketing to be in Kroger's, and I just did a presentation on trying to get a market budget for the buses and a couple of other things. That's what I was saying, the ADD. Times are very hard. So yes, for me to have clientele over 15 years of doing hair, yes, people are coming to get their hair done, but people aren't just freely spending their money right now. So I have to use other avenues. Google helped me in the past. The biggest driver for traffic for me is social media. Even if it's one person, if I made an extra $200 a day by promoting products, yippee, that's free. That's free marketing. But now I have to tap in and start spending more money because now the expenses have gone up. So Kroger's, I need all that traffic in there. We need all the clients. We need people who see driving by behind the bus. We need Google if you're searching a silk press, because people aren't coming to get their hair done as much as they used to. We got YouTube University. So piggybacking off of what Erica said, you have to research, you have to look at your competitors, you have to tap in and kind of figure out what works best. So I'm on a big initiative to market heavy. So
Terry, what percentage of the budget do you all recommend that a restaurateur use for marketing and driving traffic?
The people we're working with a lot of DIY. Like people are doing it themselves, and so we're trying to help them connect with platforms, apps that can facilitate that. Be creative, maybe use a college student, an intern, trying to identify the bang for the buck. The bang for the buck at this level is that organic social media influencer kind of thing, and that's just where most small food businesses are. They don't start. They need to be very strategic in when they pay for something. So I couldn't really tell you that because we're working with most people that it is DIY and maybe a few little payment things. I wanted to follow up on here. So the hybrid model that you were talking about in the food industry after COVID, there's not a single business we work with where we don't recommend. You can't just have a restaurant. You got to be doing your deliveries, your catering, your meal preps, your packaged goods, CPGs. Even somebody doing a pop-up, we have you start thinking about multiple lines of business. So integral part. And also, now, our spaces are typically smaller, and also I think COVID in an interesting way forced them, but also allowed them to be really creative in how they delivered things. So it's kind of interesting. We're doing things now that wouldn't have been acceptable before COVID, and now customers are, I don't know, COVID pushed them into somebody's delivering a cocktail in a cup on the street. You know, it opened the doors for some creative stuff. We're settling, and COVID really drove people into delivery and catering, but people are still interested in the brick and mortar. Yeah, and so the people I work with, what they just past couple of days, it's like, why do you still want to have a storefront? And it's like this passion about people and hospitality and serving the food and sharing stories and culture, and that's where it comes in a storefront. And so for all of us working together to figure out, from developers to the banks to us, like figuring out how to make that feasible for somebody that has a great product and a passion, but not a lot of opportunity or resources.
Can I add to this really quick? Sure. One thing that I noticed it's a positive and kind of like a aha moment through COVID was, before COVID, like most food that you got delivered was like pizza, right? Like, why in the world we thought that everything else couldn't be delivered? I don't know. I'm not smart enough. I didn't think about that. But post-COVID, everything can be delivered. 7-Eleven, UDF, coffee, anything, stuff that you would have never thought, like, why do I want my coffee delivered to me, right? Ice, anything you can think of, liquor, can all be delivered. And so post-COVID, when we were closed, I'm like, man, I got to be a part of this. But DoorDash, Uber Eats, none of those would allow candles to be delivered. Plant shops can be on there, but I didn't have it listed as a plant shop, so I kept getting denied, right? Even though I sold plants at the time. So I said, well, I'm just going to do it myself, right? So during that time, the 3 months that we were kind of up and down closed, I probably made more money delivering stuff than when we opened back up. But when I opened back up, I didn't have the capacity to be doing two things, like being in my store and delivering stuff. I mean, because people were getting everything delivered. Like, oh, can you deliver these 4 huge pants? I'm like, thank God I have a big truck. Yes, I can, So it was a very lucrative business. And so now, just like as a small business owner and someone who doesn't have the scale of like a DoorDash, like I've even tried recently and I keep getting denied. They're like, well, you're not a plant shop. I'm like, yeah, but I sell plants, right? So for me, it's also partnering with plant shops to say, hey, I know you sell plants. Can you include my candles if somebody wants to get an order? So sometimes your marketing can also be a collaboration with somebody else who is doing something where you all can go in and something joint to.
And there's also the opportunity, Amazon being a distributor. I know we say Amazon is big and everybody's against Amazon, but for some people, putting their goods as a store in Amazon is a way to go that would cause them to bring in more than they would normally bring in on their own, helping to drive traffic in those kinds of ways. And so really, because of the inflation that you're talking about, because people really only have about $250 of disposable income a month. And the question that every entrepreneur should ask is, why would they spend part of that $250 a month on my goods? We cannot continue to just only have our friends and families try to buy our product over and over and over, and they get upset with them when they don't. So somebody talk about the importance of widening your network, widening your customer base.
Yeah, great point about that question to ask people, because in the market, it's robust, it's active, and but what you might not know, those stores have to be open 6 days a week. So you may be there on the weekends and it's crazy crushing. Those stores are trying to create customers Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And our launch storefront programs are right there next to Findlay, and they got to work their butts off to get customers. So even though you're right there in the middle of all that, to get somebody to cross the street, you should ask yourself that question: what is going to get those people across the street? So you got to be constantly marketing and very creative.
Do you have a story you want to share?
Yeah, so just last week I was in LA for my birthday, and I went in a store there, and they had a candle way smaller than mine, probably about 3 ounces smaller than mine. It was like $68. And people were in there just buying them. Like, no, people, and the price was like so small on the side. It was like on a little digital card. It wasn't even like there. And me, I'm like, where's the price? How much is this thing? People were just getting it. And so this guy walked down the aisle and he was like, excuse me, can you take a picture for me? And we were like, sure. And he was like, oh, my product is about to be put in this store. And I said, oh, that's great. I'm looking to do that. Can you tell me more? And I was telling him how people complained to me that my candle was $30. They're like, I can't believe you're charging $30 for a candle. He's like, those aren't your people. He was like, because he told me to go to his website. I did, and I looked at his product, and it was some type of drop, and it was like $48. And he was telling me his story, and I was just having a conversation like last week. Like when I initially priced my candles at $15, I priced them for my friends because my friends don't buy candles. So I'm like, if I want them to buy them, they got to be cheap. But I didn't think about my cost of goods. I didn't have any of that. My time, none of that, because it was just something new. I had no idea what I was doing, if this thing was even going to work. It wasn't my dream job, right? I thought it was just a fun hobby. But as I've grown into it and it's something that I'm passionate about and it's a true business for me, now I'm like you said, I don't rely on my friends, my families. Like my mom is like, I don't like any of your candles. They're too complicated. Like she wants vanilla and peach. Like that's all she wants. I don't make those type of candles. So you really have to know your audience. Like she said, knowing your numbers, you have to know who you're selling to, because it's a lot on the news that says people are not spending. But if you look at economics and talk to it, that is not true. People are spending money. But you, like you said, have to market to those people so that they know that I need to spend my money with you now, right? Because if I don't know, I'm just going to go to the same old. I don't know that there's other options out there. So it seems slow, but you got to get in front of different people that have the money, that are willing to spend and believe in you that, yeah, me paying $30 for a candle is nothing. You probably should be charging more, right? That's the person I'm looking for. So know your customer.
This is interesting when you say that's the person that I'm looking for. Everybody wants that person.
Yeah.
With all the disposable income, but we're not circulating in those circles. You said I was making these candles for my friends, and I knew that my friends, my family, my church people, my this, my that, are only going to pay $15. But I don't want to go and become friends or know other people in other neighborhoods or other circles for whom that $30 or that $48 or that $68 is nothing. And so one of the questions I wanted to come to you, Lachey, about was about this whole network in terms of, being a part of chambers, being a part of different community events, getting to know your council people, getting to know the people who are able to service these kinds of things, and just getting outside of your circle in order to get more customers.
So, like I said, I'm an introvert and I don't want to talk to anyone, right? But part of that too is really stepping outside of your comfort zone. But sometimes the work can happen on its own. And when we're talking about location and what business is like, I want to know what the commercial space next to me is going to look like in a couple of years. Will they help drive my consumer base? Those are important questions to ask and things to know. So I'm going to pick on College Hill because I get to. They'll get me later. But part of their development and building up their business district, so down that Hamilton Avenue corridor, you see a lot of, going on there. Some of the things that we don't consider here, like parking spots, right? So there's going to be huge conversations about what to do with the right side of the street, and the commercial space there is vacant. But we want to make sure that we're driving in business, we're building into an opportunity to build relationships for the other businesses down that corridor. What we don't think about, though, is how that resident is going to feel about getting their parking spot taken away to build something else. And so then you have a resident issue, and now that's impacting not only your business, but the future of that commercial space. So again, there's no perfect, solution, but asking those questions, building those relationships, and seeing what the next neighborhood over is looking like and what their plans are for the next few years. How does that drive into your business? If you have the cash on hand to continue to keep your storefront open, that helps. So 6 to 12 months, and then I say, I know in 12 months, my neighbor is going to be I have food, but that's a bar, and now we get to exchange some of our consumer base. You have planned well, and you have that relationship to do so.
And one of our facilitators was telling a story about how, she'd opened her business in a particular neighborhood, and the neighborhood changed, kind of like what you were talking about. And it got to the point where her clients were uncomfortable coming to her shop. And so then she moved her business to another neighborhood that they would be more comfortable in. and was able to grow and continue and scale and all that because she had to make a pivot in her location. And then I'm coming to you. If you could do it all over again, or if you could give somebody one piece of advice based on what you've learned, what would it be?
Run. So no. Just kidding. Yeah, I would do it all over again. I would do it smarter. Excuse me. I wouldn't be so impulsive. I wouldn't be so impulsive. Again, I would know my numbers because I promise I really did not know what I was doing. I just had all the clients in the world, and then I opened up because I kind of wanted to go over some of the other questions, but I'm going to make this really quick. First salon was a hole in the wall. I didn't grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth, but at least we had a thermostat. The man told me it was a thermostat, so I thought it was a thermostat. It was no heat in there. I just was so slow. I mean, I just did everything wrong. So you said something, Lachey, about having a lawyer. I read every contract. I read almost everything. I would do it all over again. I would be smarter. I wouldn't do the 50% on fun because I still do that. But I would do everything with the intent of understanding what the goal is and understanding that it would be hard and it's all worth it. But I mean, you really have to understand that business changes, clients change. You're going to have so many unexpected things. So just prepare yourself. So yes, I will do it all over again and be okay with having an e-commerce business. Be okay with partnering. Like you said, be okay with being humble because you don't want to be broke trying to have a storefront just because you want to tell people you have a business. You know, you have to be okay with doing what's best for you. So
now we started a few minutes late so that we could get everything together and everybody get a chance to come into the space. We're going to have about 10 minutes of question and answer. So does anybody have a question for anybody on the panel? Salima.
Hi, everyone. So my question is for anyone that wants to answer. For people that are entrepreneurs and they're looking to scale into a brick and mortar slowly, what are I think it's like I've seen like the positives of it, but I actually want to focus on the negatives. So what are some of the negatives that were associated with you having a brick and mortar that you didn't know until you were in that space?
A big one. I mean, I knew this, but parking, like, and how much parking. I think people really, if you patronize my business, your service may be 2 hours. It could be 3 or 6 hours. So making sure that people are safe, making sure that we have adequate parking like spaces. I mean, that's really that I've seen businesses close because parking, I mean, you get your hair done. And then you got to pay a certain amount. I'm okay with paying for parking in certain areas. I got clients who've gotten told. So they never came back. You know what I mean? But parking is really important, making sure that people are able to patronize you safely. They have somewhere to park, even if they have to pay. But, making sure you have like adequate parking, in my opinion, that's like one of the biggest things.
I will add also, and we kind of talked a little bit about this, but your landlord or whoever your developer is for your property, getting to know them before you sign the lease, it sounds really good, but you want to get to know who you're going to be in bed with for the next 2 years, right? And also being very, very clear about the things in the building that are your responsibility. Very clear, right? We had a leak upstairs. We were below an apartment. The assumption is it's not our leak, it's from the washer upstairs. You damaged my stuff, why do I have to do the complaint? But it's like, well, it was in your space, and this is a repeated thing, right? So really, really knowing the history. Ask the people that are next to you, like, hey, how are they with maintenance? How are they? Don't be afraid to ask, because you're signing your name on the dotted line. So be very, very clear about the relationship that you're going to have. How do you communicate with them? Is it by text? Is it by email? Is it 24 hours? Those type of things that people don't think about when you have a brick and mortar, but you want to know who your developer, who is over your landlord, et cetera.
And I have things to add, so many that I would, we have our people step back and develop out their mission and vision and values. And through that, they identify why they want a brick and mortar, what it looks like. And through that, like, you identify all the things you need in there, like the parking, is it permitted? Can you do this? What about signage? You absolutely don't sign it. You need to have a lawyer to review this stuff. But and it's very expensive. You were responsible for so much: insurance, repairs, permitting, knowing your neighborhood, working with local organizations to understand that. I don't know where you're getting 2-year leases, because our people are like 5 years at minimum.
And negotiating.
Yes. This is another where for our people with a lawyer, but also having relationships, knowing what's going on with the developers and banks, and you learn things about what developers stress it out about different spaces, and they have room to negotiate because they just want to activate that space. But knowing your mission, knowing who you are, what you are, will help you make great decisions. Something may look good on the surface, but if you check it about what your mission, vision is, it may not fit that. So identify everything you want, what you got, get the expert resources. The lawyer is the place to spend money, I will say. Yeah, and so
the Mortar program, you get access to free legal service.
yeah.
I would like you to expand on how you've taken Annetta's Beauty Bar from that hole in the wall to the different layers of your business now, and how you plan on moving that in the future.
That wasn't on the so I'm just playing. A lot of support, networking, growing, understanding my passion and learning. I swear I ain't trying to be funny when I say knowing my numbers, because I'm friends with the director of the Women's Business Center, and she was looking at me. She was like, "You don't know your numbers?" And I was like, "Huh?" And it was like, and of course I've never been slow, but I focused on providing a service. So knowing so much about the numbers, projections, all those things, goals, and how to make it happen. And the goal in the future is, after I get this together, opening up and building from the ground up, or maybe, renovating something, but having suites for more women, but creating, or men, whatever, creating a space where beauty industry experts can be successful. We have the marketing and other things and resources to help them grow. And saying this to what Salima was saying, you have such an amazing business. I think the biggest thing with brick and mortars right now, if people go into that, I think having multi-use for your space. I think a lot of people just keep it as one thing, having events. And that's something I may branch out into, like having events, having people, because that means that I'm capping out at just these girls renting, or whoever does commission based. How can I make more money in this place? Fireside chat for her, but you know what I mean? Whatever I can, you can rent my space, but whatever I can do, you know what I mean? Sales, whatever I can do to make money off the space, because I don't want to just be paying like my lease, So, but yeah.
So there's also building a team around you. Because in a lot of places, you're the artist. Salima is an excellent chef, but maybe she doesn't have the accounting, maybe she doesn't have the legal, maybe she's not the best marketer. And how can you build a team around you to compensate for the weaknesses that you might have, or the areas of opportunity? Because, whether you're a speaker or whatever, I don't want an agent. I just want somebody to book me. Just tell me where I need to show up and how much food you need. That's what we really crave on the inside, but that is not always available to us. We have to get some other people around us to help us. I'm going to go to Athena and then come back.
Okay. When I first started out years and years ago, I had the luxury of renting a facility, and it was through a young lady who had multiple locations. So I just rented, and it basically came to me. So now I'm learning this new process. And what I want to know is the new process. I don't know if I missed this part, but do you all go to a realtor, or how does it actually start in order to find a brick and mortar? Or is it an organization you go to, or a developer? I mean, what's the ground rules now for that?
It can happen in lots of different. It can happen in a lot of different ways. One thing, my key part of advice is make sure whoever you're working with, who they represent, because often I'm talking to somebody and they make it sound like I would never put a food business into some place that they're not ready for, and blah blah blah. But they are absolutely representing the landlord and the developer, not you. So. Make sure that clearly who is paying them, because at the end of the day, that's who's going to get the best deal there.
So there's some situations, like a 3CDC, where that development corporation is ensuring that the places downtown and wherever they are, their footprint is, all of those buildings are occupied. So that's when you're dealing with a development corporation. But there may be somebody that owns, Chelsea was going into a smaller place that was owned by a family, and there is, more than one level, and they wanted to rent it out. And so that was like a personal landlord. And there might be other situations where there's somebody that owns multiple properties in the neighborhood, and you might have to go through them or through their management company in order to do that. And then there are some, even if you go on to a Sipsy Klein website, or you'll see commercial, and you'll see, this is a negotiable place that you can get in a particular neighborhood, and that might be a neighborhood that you're interested in, and you can get access to that information through a realtor, even through LISC, the Port Authority. There's a lot of different ways to get into a brick and mortar location. But I also want to ask, and maybe you can answer this, is there any value to owning versus leasing? And what is it? Okay.
Yeah, if you have established a commercial space, you get to kind of control what that pricing will look like. An example that was brought to me recently, let's say you have the rent for a space or someone to come in at $1,900, and it sits there that, hey, we are recruiting a business to come in, and it sits there for 10 days. So you go back outside and you say, well, it's $1,500. And you get 12 calls, right? So now you get to kind of tamper with your pricing, but you also kind of own that property. So what happens in that space is up to you. And then you get the support too of the community around you. They want to feed into you. They want it to stay there. They don't want a lot of turnover, especially if you've had that or owned that property for a long period of time.
We have to look at the fact that as we look at businesses, ones that are small and those that scale, Starbucks, McDonald's, yes, they are about coffee. Yes, they are about fast food. Yes, they are about community, but they are also about real estate. And, these are companies that own as much real estate as, the Catholic Church owns real estate, and the money, the great money is in ownership. If we can get our numbers, save our money, and then you get to dictate what goes on in your space. But obviously you have to crawl before you walk, and walk before you run. And so if you have a future goal toward owning your own space and renting it out to people and you becoming the landlord, then all of these things that this wonderful panel has said is the stair-step way to get yourself ready for that.
And I was just going to add, the best way to do this is diversify your circles, diversify who your advisors are. That's how you get investors, one, but you get a multitude of ideas about what the people around you might seek in your product or your market or the industry in general. You might get an accountant to advise you and not have to seek that on your own, and then remaining teachable in these spaces. But definitely diversifying your group and who is feeding into you would be very beneficial.
I'm revamping my business. I'm really coming back into it. And I've been just downloading the different ideas to where it's just totally different. And my greatest concern is getting into the city, knowing certain corporations, leadership, and all. That way I could, especially the corporate side of it. I do luxury tea parties, and some of those tea parties can basically, obviously, minister to corporate sector. And I'm kind of looking, just trying to decide what part of town, what I really want to do in order to keep that, I don't want to say style, but it's basically a how can I cater to that person's need and keep it actually coming. So it was a balance between either looking for a place where I could rent from someone or possibly going into purchasing a building and building it up from the ground up. And then that way it can become what I just, what I really want it to be, and have that authority to be a community leader as well too, in the favor of the people, because the business itself, again, is to minister to the people. It's, making everybody feel good about themselves. That's the whole thing, is making people feel secure about themselves. So it's a toss of what I want to do.
I know you mentioned location. I would also dig into, I know the Chamber released their State of the Region report. Actually, they did a presentation yesterday. I would look into that report, because then you can kind of see what your market looks like. Who lives where? Where's, what's the population like? If you're seeking professional spaces, you might not want to go into a community where most people have aged out, right? So looking into those reports, the State of Black Cincinnati that was issued through the Urban League is a good space to look. But during doing that research, I would look into those too.
Yes, the market research is really important, because one of the things that we see is that people are putting out products and services that they think somebody wants, but people don't actually want or need or aren't willing to pay, or are willing to pay the cost that people want. And so you really have to do your research to see whether or not there is a market for what you're putting forth.
All right, this concludes our Real Talk. Please give our panelists a round of applause. Thank y'all so much for the insight and your expertise. Is there anything any of you all would like to plug while you have an audience? Anything you have coming up, events, programs, services? This is your time.
Yeah, so I just released a blog on my website. The first submission today was the 5 reasons I decided to close my store. And I think it's very valuable information. So you can definitely check that out on my website. My Instagram is bydistrict78, and my website is the same, www.bydistrict78. I do mobile candle parties. So I go to your location. I'm in the process of building out my studio, where you'll be able to come to my studio like I had at my store. I also do corporate giving, wholesale. So if you're interested in having your own candle line for your boutique, your brand, even a personal event that you're having, I do that. And I love talking to entrepreneurs about their business. So please reach out to me. My email is hello@bydistrict78.com as well. So.
I have a few things. There's information over there. So Findlay Market, we have a couple of things coming up. One is what a iPhone photography workshop. It's free. It can be an industry, but it focus on food. But you have to register. And also we do we call Meet and Eats, the entrepreneur mindset. Last week we had Jeffrey Harris of Nolia with Keith Pandolfi, and it was fabulous, because the intention is to go beyond the topics and the skills, but like tell their stories and how they did it, because there's something beyond checking off the boxes. And these two ladies, I'm watching them and hearing them, they exhibit that mindset. I don't exactly know what that formula is, but I want to put these people in front of entrepreneurs to try to help figure out and inspire it. So it's in November. Sweeten Meats, Christian and Anton, they're a food business that went from pop-ups to food truck to, they've just recently opened a new brick and mortar. We try to create a good vibe. We've got nibbles, we got a cash bar, we got music, and it's supposed to be a conversational thing, so I invite you all to look at that. And then we do in February, we have a course called Growing into a Storefront. It's a 9-week course. There are some criteria, but registration will be opening up in the fall. My card is over there. Feel free to grab it and email me, because I love to support people who want to do this.
Please
Can I?
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Let me plug the salon because I'm talking about business. I gotta share my business. So it's Anetta's Beauty Bar. It is in North Avondale, and I'm Anetta. And then we have a lash tech, makeup artist, natural hair specialist. I do silk presses and sew-ins, and then we have one space available. So you can find us on Instagram at Anetta's Beauty Bar.
And then I'll go into LISC, Local Initiative Support Corporation. Although a national organization, we are centered in building what we call resilient communities. So as a community development financial institution, we are not making this process tough, right? We want to make sure that we are leveraging both public and private dollars. So that could look like loans, that could look like grants. But we are community connectors, and we do a lot of public policy advocacy. So I'll leave my card. If it is regarding business development, I'll refer you to my counterpart, but we are certainly here to support.
I also want to recommend, as Terry said, Kristen graduated early in the Mortar program. Brian from Esoteric. Any of the Mortar graduates that have a brick and mortar business, go visit their business, go ask them the questions that you might have, see what their trials, their tribulations, their successes were, and what their recommendations are. There are a lot of them that you can, and they're very generally willing to talk to you, to listen to you, and give you any kind of advice. So if you're afraid of networking, use the Mortar Network as your first networking option.
Hey, thank y'all so much for attending tonight.